break a leg! Break them both!
Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, I'm Anarchii, your favorite artistic little hell spawn. If you like what you see here, I hope you stick around. I'm trying to hit 50,000 of you before the year's end, so let's see if we can make that happen. Before we get into anything today, I actually want to address something about my last Monster High video. I've had a lot of people debate in my comments on whether or not the show was actually canceled, with some people saying that the screenshot I showed was fake, so I tried to do further research for this video just to see if season 3 did get renewed, but there's been nothing. In fact, most sources I could find said that the show hasn't been renewed and it's very likely that it never will. It is pretty up in the air, considering a lot of the sources I could find weren't really official. It's not like they were from Nickelodeon or anything. However, season 2 ended in October of last year, so I feel like if there was going to be a new season, there would have been something said about it by now. There was an official announcement for the cancellation of the third live-action movie, which only kind of furthers my suspicion that maybe Nickelodeon doesn't want to make the show anymore. That, and in combination with the sheer amount of animated shows that have been getting canceled by large studios lately. Who knows, maybe the show is just on hiatus and they'll come back, but for now, we still have to finish 3 more of the main ghouls. If you didn't watch the first video, I suggest go watching it now, considering I explained a lot of the new lore that I thought of. Don't worry, I'll wait here for you. Are you back? Alright, cool, let's get started. Last time we discussed Frankie, Claudine, and Draculaura. This time we're going to be discussing Cleo, Ghoulia, and Lagoona, starting with the future Queen of the Niles herself.
Well, I was named after her, so it was meant to be.
Similarly with how I felt about Draculaura, I like both G1 and G3 Cleo in terms of appearance. Though for G3, I definitely enjoy the look of Cleo's doll way more than I like her look in the show. I still do not understand why the looks between the show and the dolls are so drastically different. Personality-wise though, I say she's really bland in G3. The classic influencer trope, though she's not as insufferable as other forced-in influencer characters from recent cartoons like, I don't know, whatever the hell this purple pony's name in G5 is. But G1 Cleo had an edge to her that G3 just doesn't have, and it makes Cleo so interesting to me. She wasn't the best person in G1, but I argue she wasn't a bad person, and you could argue was a product of her environment. You can tell that Cleo cared about the people around her. G3 Cleo is just a bit overly nice for me, specifically in the show. I'm not counting the movie. Frankly, I feel like Cleo represents an issue I have with G3 overall. While I'm happy it offers diversity in body types, disability, and identity, I feel like it also misses the fact that Monster High is just as much about embracing flaws and working around them as much as it is about embracing differences that you can't control. This is not me saying G1 was perfect with this, as there are characters who are pretty black and white. For example, I guess Gory would be the best example, because I feel like Torlight gets fleshed out in the later Pride comics. But everyone in G3 just feels weirdly squeaky clean, like there isn't any like personality flaws that run deep beyond like surface level things. There might be a few exceptions. I stopped watching the show after like mid-season 2, so maybe I'm missing some things. I get that they don't want the characters to be unlikable for the sake of marketability, but it makes everyone so boring because their only personality trait is I'm quirky in some way. At least that's how it feels like to me. On to my version of Cleo. You can probably already guess she's more based on Cleo from Generation 1. She's the youngest in the Denial family, and for that she's the most neglected, mostly being seen as a pawn in things just like she is in New York. Most of her parents' attention goes to Nephra. In this version, I kind of fuse both G3 and G1 Nephra in terms of personality. She's still pretty mean, but you can tell that she has a soft side to her, and you can tell that she does love her sister. But she also really resents her. She's just as much of a victim of her parents' expectations as Cleo, and she and Cleo have a similar dynamic to Isabella and Mirabel in Encanto. They're both equally jealous of each other. Nephra is jealous and envious of Cleo because, in her mind, she doesn't have to deal with their parents' constant expectations and constantly on her back. She's not forced to maintain appearances 24/7, and she can essentially be whatever she wants to be. And Cleo, on the other hand, is jealous that no matter where her sister goes, she gets all the attention and praise. No matter what she's doing, no matter how minuscule it is, she's always the heiress of Cleopatra who can do no wrong, both to her parents and the general public. Meanwhile, she's left as the forgotten denial, forced to constantly be playing catch up with her perfect older sister. This is why she attends Monster High. In this universe, Nephra would have never went to Monster High. She would have been given perfect, proper, at-home tutors. So Monster High essentially gives Cleo a place where she can build herself from the ground up. No one's comparing her to Nephra, no one's comparing her to Cleopatra. She can just be Cleo, and she revels in her popularity that she's built over the years. However, as you may guess, Cleo has a major fear of being left behind, forgotten, and overall fading from people's minds, and this manifests into her freaky flaw. Cleo's body, and all the bodies of the denials in most mummies, is actually made of sand. Well, sand and bones and some other corpse parts, but mostly sand. And it's all held together by these enchanted bandages that give the illusion of a body. However, if those bandages start to unravel, then the body falls apart. It's because of this that mummies are often seen as the most high maintenance of monsters. Their bandages need to be regularly changed and maintained, or else they'll unravel and start to disappear. The denials are very insecure about this particular trait because it often shows that they aren't as perfect as they try to present themselves. And in turn, Cleo is also very anxious about it. The thought of people seeing her in a state of unravel absolutely terrifies her, so when she sees that it's happening, she will often run away and try to handle it somewhere private. The only person who has ever seen things like this is Deuce. Now, before the Clanky fans come for me, I want to explain my decision. I do really like Clanky in G3. However, because my version of Cleo is more based on G1 and my version of Frankie is more based on G3, I just didn't think these two would mesh together well romantically. So I just thought putting her back with Deuce was just the proper option. I do still want Frankie to have a girlfriend, but something I forgot to mention in Frankie's video is that I actually like that they have multiple different partner options, and let me explain why. In a quick summary, the reason I feel like this is because I feel like it gives a realistic depiction on romance in actual teenagers, and it fits for someone like Frankie who hasn't been alive that long. And giving them the room to be able to explore what they like in a partner not only is realistic depictions on how it is actually dating as a teenager, but it could also really flesh out their overall character. I do still want Frankie to have a girlfriend that they settle down with at some point. I'm just trying to figure out who that is. So far on the list, we have Rebecca, Gigi, and Avia. If you have any more suggestions, put them in the comments section, but we need to get back to Cleo. Cleo is still her catty and self-centered self, but she also does have a kind heart, especially towards her friends, which is why she later joins the group with Frankie, Claudine, and Draculaura on their initiative to help monsters. I imagine she also makes them a little logo or a little theme, no monsters left behind or no forgotten monsters, something like that. Maybe she becomes their social media manager and makes a blog where monsters can write to them and ask them for help or have them solve a problem or get out of the normie world, stuff like that. That way you can still keep the kind of influencer side from G3 Cleo. This is actually how I imagine that she'd meet Deuce. Oh, another little cute thing I added in regards to Cleo and Deuce. I decided Cleo does not have legitimate eyeballs. Like, the eyes she's looking through aren't like really there. They're more like magical manifestations of eyes. Therefore, she and Deuce can look into each other's eyes like normally, and Cleo won't turn to stone. I thought I ate with that. Oh, also, I made Deuce gender fluid. I don't know, it was demanded of me. I couldn't say no. Also because snakes don't have a concept of gender, and I thought that was funny. Anyway, that's Cleo. I love her. She's beautiful. And now we can move on to the zombie. Brains! I love G1 Ghoulia. I love her design. I love her personality. She's just so lovely. That's my baby right there. However, on the other end, I hate G3 Ghoulia. She sucks. I hate her with a passion. Like, you remember last video where I implied that I hated Lagoona? I lied. I hate this one. I really hate this one. Her design is ugly and generic, and her personality is even more lame. However, There is something about G3 Ghoulia I feel like I want to address. I've seen a lot of people, including people in my own comment section, accuse the G3 creators of disability erasure in reference to Ghoulia, with the claim that G1 Ghoulia is nonverbal. And I'll be honest, I don't think this is fair because in canon, Ghoulia was never nonverbal in G1. I understand why people thought she was, but she's not. Ghoulia and the other zombies of G1 speak their own language called just zombie. That's why if you go back and watch the movies and you see Ghoulia talking to the other girls, they talk right back to her as if they understand her. That's because they do.
That's a great idea, Ghoulia.
No, Lagoona hasn't told Gil yet.
She wants it to be a surprise!
Infernal. You right. Manipulate them.
That being said, if you headcanon Ghoulia as nonverbal, you are perfectly valid in that. I'm not trying to take that away from you. I don't like the change in G3 either, and I will be reversing it, especially since zombies don't have much of a difference from normies besides their skin tone, and removing this aspect only makes zombies in-universe more forgettable. And no, them screaming zombies at random times doesn't make up for it. However, I also believe in being fair, and I don't think it's fair to make erasure accusations at something that was never canon in the first place. I imagine that in my version that undead characters can automatically speak zombie, so characters like Cleo, Draculaura, and Frankie can understand it just fine, but characters like Lagoona and Claudine would have to actually learn the language to understand it, and I imagine in Monster High it's actually a requirement to learn zombie because of just how many students there are zombies. Going back to my Ghoulia though, Ghoulia was the easiest to design but the hardest to write for. She's arguably the most neglected character of the main ghouls in both G1 and G3, and she's so neglected that she straight up wasn't in G2, so I didn't even have a reference for that. I feel like it's easy to tell that most of this design is inspired mostly on G1 Ghoulia and I just tossed out G3, but another inspiration I had was actually Moonlight Jewel's redesign of Ghoulia that I thought was really cool, so I took inspiration from the scene part of it and tried to do it in my own way. For her character, I didn't actually change much in terms of her personality. In her wiki, it says that Ghoulia is a relatively shy character and she has several scheduling issues. She can't function without a proper schedule, and social anxiety keeps her out of things, which you know what is so real. This makes me think that a big reason that Ghoulia is constantly left out is because her character traits are often just given to other characters. Her nerdiness is often handed off to Frankie, and her shyness is often handed off to Twyla. So my goal is to take her traits and try to make her more distinct. Ghoulia is a shy person and she's the smartest of the ghouls academically, especially in terms of things like English and history. She's really into comics and stories just like she is in G1, so she's often the one writing the blogs with Cleo. I mostly added this because I feel like despite the fact that Cleo plays such a big role in Ghoulia's overall character, their friendship is almost completely neglected after the web series, which I thought was sad. She's particularly into hero and mystery stories, which is why I brought back her love of Deadfast, and she really wants to do great things and help people because someone once helped her and gave her a second chance at life. In my new lore, Ghoulia is a girl that died in the late 2010s, before recently being mysteriously brought back to life as a zombie by a Grim Reaper she could only catch a glimpse of. She doesn't remember who she was, who brought her back, or how she died, so that became a big part of her character as she tries to solve this big mystery of herself. Her love of comics and books is the only thing from her old life she remembers, which is why she clings to it so heavily. Because her brain is so rotted, she also still has that scheduling issue. She also struggles heavily without a lot of notes and detailed instructions because she's prone to just getting things confused and forgetting things. But it doesn't negate the fact that she is a very smart person. She can find things very easily. I feel like this better distincts her from Frankie now that they have two distinct kinds of nerdiness, if that makes sense. And for anyone who's just curious, the person who revived her was actually River Styx from the Haunted movie in G1. I imagine she was practicing her Reaper duties and brought back Ghoulia by complete accident. Maybe her little ghost orb self maybe led the ghouls to finding Ghoulia in the graveyard, and she's able to help them lead her back to Monster High and do it in a way to where nobody knows it was her and she doesn't get in trouble with her dad. If we ever do get like a haunted arc, I imagine instead of Kiyomi haunting Draculaura, it's River haunting Ghoulia to make sure everything's okay and make sure everything's good. I think that would be pretty cool. Oh, and also Ghoulia's Arrow Ace, because I said so. She is a queen, and I love her, and I love her design. I want her as a doll, oh so bad. I thought when I gave her a bone arm and missing parts of her face that I was like pushing it too far, but I wanted her to look like an actual zombie and have something that made her distinct outside of just having gray skin and blue hair. So her body was actually inspired by Emily from Corpse Bride. I don't think this will be too unreasonable. I mean, Frankie has a different leg mold and you can simulate her missing face with paint. Now that she's done, I'm gonna move on to Lagoona, and I had something very special in mind for her. Just before that though, I'm happy to announce that this video is sponsored by me. Though if you know anyone wants to actually sponsor me, my business email is it's in the description. Anyway, I'm happy to announce that I have a Patreon. There's only 2 tiers at the moment. We have a $2 tier, which will give you early HDs of my art, and a $5 tier, which will give you that and exclusive work in progress posts, Patreon only blog posts and bonus artwork, video polls, and early watchings of my videos. I'm planning 3 other tiers that I'll open over time that will give you physical rewards like stickers, prints, and even keychains, but I want to start with something small just to make sure that this will actually work. And if you like my designs and want me to design one of your characters or even redesign them, you can commission my Ko-fi. Both links are in the description. And if you want to help me continue to make my videos and even continue to make Amity a reality, this is the best way to support me. And if you can't, that's fine. Just simply sharing in my videos will do a lot. Thank you so much for all of your support. And let's get back to the video.
How did Lady Gostaline impress the suave Duke of Gulshire?
On to our final ghoul, Lagoona Blue. And I'll be honest, G3 Lagoona has definitely grown on me in the last few years. I actually like her a lot, but I also really love G1 Lagoona, at least to a degree. And we all have to admit that these two are just fundamentally 2 completely different characters that just share the same name. And that aspect gave me a lot of issues when it came to designing and writing. I had 2 routes I could go, one more based on G1, one more based on G3, for both writing and design, and I ended up liking them both very equally and didn't want to just pick one. So I decided I just wasn't, and I decided to just make them fundamentally 2 different characters. Giving myself more work, but you know what, it's good for the story. So from here on out, I will be referring to G3 Lagoona as her new name, Perla, and I will be referring to G1 Lagoona as well, Lagoona. I have, to say, personality wise, I love them both, but I genuinely like G3 Lagoona more because G1 Lagoona just has so much wasted potential, especially when it comes to telling a story about low self-esteem, or even just how racial prejudice can affect romantic relationships. She's also an unfortunate victim of the 2010s trying to convince young girls that toxic relationships are something to fight for. Thanks 2010s for teaching young girls that they should just tolerate men that treat them like poopy. Her movie is the biggest letdown in my opinion because instead of expanding on the ideas we already introduced with Lagoona for previous movies, we just give her stage fright. And yeah, you could argue that that does lean into self-esteem issues, but it's just so boring for Lagoona as a character. For G3 Lagoona, as I mentioned, I love her, but that's really all I can say is that she's adorable and she's cute, and I love her. She kind of has the same issue as all other G3 characters where she's a pretty surface-level character with surface-level character traits. Though, I will say, the freshwater versus saltwater conflict is handled much better in Generation 3 than it is in Generation 1, where they kind of try to brush over it, but still try to include it. It's really weird. For Perla and Lagoona, I have decided that they are twin sisters. Their mother is a sea monster and their father is a lake monster. It was a very much Romeo and Juliet situation that left the family pretty ostracized from both of their extended families. Perla and Lagoona didn't notice this when they were younger, but their parents tried their best to have them experience both sides of their culture, but as they got older, they started to feel very different no matter where they were. Lagoona leans more towards the saltwater side of her heritage, so when it comes to people who don't know that she's both fresh and saltwater, she tends to be treated very differently by freshwater people and in freshwater areas, and the vice versa goes for Perla, considering she leans more towards her freshwater side. And it's worse when it comes to people who know that they're related and know about the family's history, and they're treated like outcasts from either side, sometimes even bullied for it and called things like half-fish and stuff like that. This is why, when they decided to go to Monster High, they made the decision to not tell people that they were sisters. Not because they have any malice towards each other or either sides of their culture, but simply because that they just can't bear to be outcasts again. Lagoona is the more serious, calm, and level-headed sister. She's sporty, and she's able to come to rational decisions for anything but herself. She tends to come to very high conclusions about how people think of her, she's very anxious about her performance, and she just has overall very low self-esteem that leads to people-pleasing behavior. Perla is the opposite, though. She's still desperate for people to like her, but she handles it in a different way, often not thinking about what other people are thinking at all, and she tends to overstep boundaries in her effort to make everyone happy and make people like her without realizing how it affects them or even realize that she's doing it at all. Despite the differences, one thing that ties both salt and sea monsters together is a freaky flaw that all of them have, which consists of some kind of sensory issues. Just like all fish, they're prone to severe sensory issues and are very sensitive to their environment, though the effects of what happens when they're overstimulated can come in different ways. Some become aggressive, some become skittish and spaz out, things like that. It can affect them so deeply that it can affect something as simple as their diets. Perla can't eat too much salt, and Lagoona needs a lot of salt in her diet to remain healthy. Not to mention, Lagoona finds fresh water and frankly normal food in general as overly bland and something that she just genuinely can't eat. Her eyes will also dilate similarly to a Stark's in competitive or high-stress situations, making her look unsettling and sometimes unintentionally intimidating to others, and she can even get aggressive at points if she's too overstimulated. Perla, however, can't stay in water too long without becoming sluggish and bloated because of freshwater's ability to absorb water. Because of this, freshwater monsters tend to live in areas that are a mix of both land and water. But it's also why Perla is into surfing instead of swimming like Lagoona. She also has a tendency to startle easily and instinctively bolt away from any perceived danger, even if there is no danger at all. When she's overstimulated, she just simply gets very anxious and emotional, and prone to tendencies that could cause her harm, like biting her nails and things of that nature. I imagine at some point the group may figure out that they're sisters, maybe because of a conversation, and they convince them that they need to embrace who they are, and they ended up ditching their respective groups, especially since they were constantly picking on each other, and ditching them to join our main group and their initiative, I guess. And they're dedicated to helping bring saltwater and freshwater monsters together and hopefully squash all the prejudice and, all the beef. That is a big task, easier said than done, but they still want to try. I did struggle to place Gil in this plotline, mostly because I didn't care about him, so I just kind of forgot he existed, especially in G1. But if I had to pick, I would definitely be basing him off of G3 Gil, and he'd end up with Perla. And I don't know, maybe we can put Lagoona on the list of possible Frankie girlfriends. Let me know what you think of that. And that's it. That's all the main Monster High Ghouls Anarchy Edition. I don't know if this will be my last video in the series. Maybe when I get bored, I'll come back and design more of the Monster High characters. But I'm kind of fixated on Amity right now, so I'm not really sure. I'll mostly be focused on that. If you want to keep up with me, I'm trying to be more active on Tumblr, but please be sure to check out my Patreon and my Ko-fi if you want to be able to help me make more videos, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye! Hey, Editing Anarchy here. Before you go, do you guys remember when I said that the show getting canceled doesn't really matter because all they're gonna do is just make new models and just re-release a web series on YouTube just like they did with G2? Tell me why I was right. Tell me why I was right. Tell me why I was right. I knew it.